Okay, welcome back in. I'm going to do a review from Tuesday, April 8th to Thursday, April 10th from the National Hockey League. On Tuesday, we had a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 games to dive into. Starting with the Montreal Canadiens as they played host to the Detroit Red Wings. The final score would be 4-1 in this particular matchup, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Josh Anderson, who made it 2-1, 10:48 in the third period. The Habs would add two more goals to win, like I said, by a final score of 4-1. The next game took place in Buffalo as the Sabres played host to the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Sabres would shock the hockey world by shutting out the Hurricanes. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Tage Thompson. 1:32 of the second period, they would add two more goals to win 3-0. Two teams from the Atlantic as they're both battling for first place in that division as the Florida Panthers played host to the Toronto Maple Leafs. The final score would be 3-1, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Eetu Luostarinen, who would get his ninth goal of the season unassisted, 1:04 of the third period. They would add one more goal to give themselves a 3-1 victory. A bit of a shocker in New Jersey as the Devils played host to the Boston Bruins. The final score would be 7-2 in favor of the Bruins, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Jacob Loga, who would get his fourth goal of the season unassisted, 3:45 of the second period. The Devils would add two more goals, but the Bruins would add four more on top of that, winning 7-2. The Columbus Blue Jackets played host to the Ottawa Senators. You could say this was a bit of an upset, but the Blue Jackets are still technically in the running for a playoff spot, even though it's looking very, very minimal as the season comes to an end. They would win by a final score of 5-2. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Mathieu Olivier, who would make it 3-1 at that point. 19:38 of the second period, assisted by Danforth and Gudbranson. They would add two more goals on top of that to win 5-2. The Pittsburgh Penguins played host to the Chicago Blackhawks. The Penguins would shut out the Blackhawks 5-0. The game-winning goal would come off the captain's stick, Sidney Crosby, who would get his 31st goal of the season on the power play from Ricard Raquel and Brian Rust. A high-scoring game between the Nashville Predators and the New York Islanders. 7-6 would be the final score, and I'm going to scroll all the way over to the right to show you who got the game-winning goal for the Nashville Predators. They've had a disappointing season, a very disappointing season to say the least. When you add talent like Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault on your team, you would have high expectations to, compete for a Stanley Cup, not be the second worst team in your division. So Bunting tied it up, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Fedor Svechkov, who would get his eighth goal of the season from Brady Shea and Steven Stamkos, 1:56 into the overtime frame. And this was a wild game here between the Dallas Stars and the Vancouver Canucks. 6-5 would be the final score. Now, most of you might think 6-5, that might be kind of normal, until you realize that the Dallas Stars blew a huge third period lead. So they had a 3-0 lead in the second. Jake DeBrusk would score 3-1 to make it 3-1 in the third. Victor Mancini would cut the lead to 3-2 before Marvick Bourque doubled up the lead to 4-2. Granlund made it 5-2 with 2 minutes and 21 seconds to go. Keep that in mind. With 2 minutes and 21 seconds to go, the Dallas Stars had a 5-2 lead in the third period. Cue the comeback. With a minute remaining, Ratty would make it 5-3. Pius Suter would cut the lead to 5-4 with 30 seconds to go. He would score again with 7 seconds to go, tying the game up at 5. So they got 3 goals in 53 seconds, and they all had it with the net empty at that. Only for Kiefer Sherwood to get the game-winning goal for the Vancouver Canucks in the overtime frame to keep their slim playoff hopes alive at that point. That would be his 18th goal of the season from Garland, and that goal happened with a minute and 16 seconds to go in the overtime frame. What a wild game. All right, the Utah Hockey Club played host to the Seattle Kraken. 7-1 would be the final score, and the game-winning goal would come off of my favorite player, Captain Clayton Keller. He'd get the game-winning goal, making it 2-0 in favor of the Utah Hockey Club, getting his 27th goal of the season on the power play from Sergachev and Genther. And that goal happened 12:54 of the first period. They would add 5 more goals on top of that, crushing the Kraken 7-1. And the last game from Tuesday took place in Colorado, as we had 2 teams, let's be honest, who were both playoff bound and could be cup contenders as well, depending on how far either of these teams are able to go. The Avalanche would win in a shootout 3-2, and the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Charlie Coyle, who got the game-winning goal, and I scrolled all the way down, or scrolled to the next day by mistake. But yeah, Charlie Coyle would get the shootout winner for the Colorado Avalanche, giving them a 3-2 victory on Tuesday night. All right. Wednesday, we had a few games on Wednesday's tabs. We had 4, 5, just 5 games. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So the Tampa Bay Lightning played host to the Toronto Maple Leafs, who were doing a back-to-back. They first played against Florida, now they played against Tampa, and all 3 teams are still competing for first place in that Atlantic Division. The final score would be 4-3 in favor of the Toronto Maple Leafs. They would win in overtime, and we'll just take a look at the game-winning goal for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So both teams obviously got a crucial point, but the Leafs obviously got the extra point in the extra frame. So Matthew Knies would get the game-winning goal, his 29th of the season, from Austin Matthews and Morgan Riley, 2:56 of the overtime frame. A very high-scoring game between the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Rangers. 8-5 would be the final score in this one. So we'll just scroll over, keep scrolling, just keep scrolling, until we get to Philadelphia's 6th goal of the game. It's very scarce to see games with this high of a score. I've never seen an 8-5 game recently, I guess. So Couturier made it 5-4. Here we go. Tyson Forster would increase lead to 6-4, 15:33 of the third period, getting his 21st goal of the season from Sanheim and Sealer. They would add 2 more goals to win by a final score of 8-5. Holy cow. Talk about one high-scoring game. Now we got 15 goals just in this game alone, as the Minnesota Wild, who are still fighting for their playoff spot in the West, taking on the worst team in the league, the San Jose Sharks. But despite the fact that the Sharks have nothing to play for, they can easily play spoiler for the rest of the season with the amount of games that they have left and the teams that they have to play against. So I'm just going to scroll all the way over to the end, because this would have to be settled in overtime. But yeah, 15 goals in one game is pretty scarce, in my opinion. I would hate to have like a goalie on a fantasy team regardless of whether you're a Wild fan or a Sharks fan, or if you're a fan of saves. This was definitely not the game for you, to say the least. So Minnesota did have a 7-4 lead in the third period. The Sharks would mount a bit of a comeback, tying the game up at 7 with 52 seconds to go from Will Smith, only for Kirill Kaprizov to finally win the game for the Wild, 1 minute and 1 second in the overtime frame, getting his 25th goal of the season from Zuccarello and Jared Spurgeon. The Edmonton Oilers played host to one of the hottest teams in the league, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, the St. Louis Blues. 4-3 would be the final score in favor of the Oilers, who finally got back into the win column and got their captain, Connor McDavid, back as well. And he had a bit of an impact, to say the least. Pretty sure he had 3 assists or whatever it is. It's a pretty good game for coming back. So we can just keep scrolling. 3-3. And then Connor McDavid would end up getting the assist on Connor Brown's game-winning goal with just 21 seconds remaining in the third period. So the Oilers would finally get a victory under their belt, and we'll see where they place once the playoffs start. All right, the last game from Wednesday took place in Anaheim, as we had the Ducks playing host to the Calgary Flames. The final score on this one would be 4-3 in favor of the Ducks in overtime, and if you're a Flames fan, you really needed this win. if you wanted to stay competitive and try to compete for that last playoff spot. Yes, you did get a point, but the extra point would have really helped you, especially with a huge matchup against the Minnesota Wild. So Cutter Gauthier would tie the game up at 3. We would need overtime, and he got the game-winning goal as well. 1 minute and 11 seconds into the overtime frame, getting his second goal of the game from Leo Carlson. The Ducks would win 4-3. Now Thursday, here we go. We had a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games from Thursday. The Boston Bruins played host to the Chicago Blackhawks, and original six matchup took place in Beamtown. And the game-winning goal would come off the stick of Tyler Bertuzzi, who had a brief appearance with the Bruins back in the 2022-23 season. Got the game-winning goal for the Chicago Blackhawks, getting his 22nd goal of the season, unassisted, 4 minutes and 23 seconds into the third period. They would add 2 more goals and win by a final score of 5-2. The Florida Panthers played host to the Detroit Red Wings. They would win by a final score of 4-1, despite the fact the Red Wings scored the first goal of the game. Mackenzie Samskovich would get the game-winning goal, making it 2-1, 8:46 of the second period, getting his 15th goal of the season from Forsling and Belinkus. The Columbus Blue Jackets played host to the Buffalo Sabres. The final score would be 3-2 in favor of the Blue Jackets, and we'll take a look and see who got the game-winning goal for Columbus. And I scrolled over to the wrong date. My bad. This phone's very touchy. So Ben Riemsdyk would score. Aston Reese would score. The captain, Boone Jenner, will get the game-winning goal, a power play goal, his 7th of the season from Marchenko and Sean Monahan, 6:42 of the third period. The Washington Capitals played host to the Carolina Hurricanes. Both these teams have qualified for the playoffs, and both these teams have solidified themselves in their position. The Capitals have already won that division, so therefore they are first, and the Hurricanes have already locked in second place. I'm pretty sure I will take a look at the standings here in just a brief moment. So the first and second team in the Metropolitan Division took to the ice Thursday night. There we go. The final score would be 5-4 in favor of the Capitals, and they were playing their first game since since they played against the Islanders, and Ovechkin set the record for the most goals. He would have an assist in this game, adding on to his point total. Just going to keep scrolling. Jordan Martinook would score. Seth Jarvis would tie the game up at 4 with 1:45 to go. And then Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's had a resurgence to say the least, would get the game-winning goal for the Washington Capitals to give them a 5-4 shootout victory. A Battle of New York as the Rangers played host to the New York Islanders. 9-2 would be the final score in favor of the Rangers, and both these teams are still fighting for their playoff lives. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Vincent Trocheck, 13:51 of the first, getting a power play goal from Panarin and Adam Fox. So, yeah, a crushing loss for the Islanders, to say the least. All right, now we're off to Dallas as we have the battle of the top two teams in the Central Division as the Stars played host to the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets would shut out the Stars 4-0. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Nino Niederreiter with 1 minute and 23 seconds to go in the first. He would get his 16th goal of the season from Morrissey and Adam Lowry. The Vancouver Canucks took on the Colorado Avalanche. The Canucks would win by a final score of 4-1. The game-winning goal would come off the stick of Kiefer Sherwood, who got 2 game-winning goals against the Stars and the Avalanche, respectively, getting his 19th of the season from Joshua and Forbort, 7:51 of the second period. The Utah Hockey Club played host to the Nashville Predators. This game would need to be settled in a shootout, and Nashville would come away with the victory. 4-3 would be the final score. We'll take a look and see who got the shootout winner for the Preds. So Ryan O'Reilly scored. Dylan Guenther would tie the game up at 3, 5:42 of the third, and then Philip Forsberg would get the game-winning goal, the shootout winner. So like I said, he would give the Preds a 4-3 victory. The Vegas Golden Knights played host to the Seattle Kraken, and I clicked on something by mistake. 2-1 would be the final score in favor of Vegas. William Karlsson will get the game-winning goal, making it 2-0, getting his 9th of the season from Riley Smith and Brandon McNabb. 7:56 of the second period. The Kraken would get a goal, but unfortunately they were not able to tie it up, so 2-1 would be the final from Vegas. And the last game took place in Los Angeles as the Kings played host to the Anaheim Ducks. 6-1 would be the final score in favor of the Kings, who have been lights out at home, to say the least. The game-winning goal would come off the captain's stick, Anze Kopitar, who get his 20th goal of the year from Mikey Anderson and Andrei Kuzmenko, 2:17 of the second period. So they would add 4 more goals on top of that to win 6-1. Now we'll take a look at the standings from the National Hockey League as of Friday morning. So the Leafs have 100 points on the season with a record of 48, 26, and 4. They're still in first place in that division with 4 games remaining. The Lightning and the Panthers both have 4 games and 3 games respectively remaining. Their records are 45, 26, and 7 and 46, 29, and 4 for 97 and 96 points respectively. So the Lightning are 3 points back of first place, and the Florida Panthers are 4 points back of first place. If the standings end up staying this way, we will have, for the second year in a row, a battle of Florida. The Washington Capitals, as I said, they have won the Metropolitan Division. They have a record of 50, 19, and 9 for 109 points. The Carolina Hurricanes have a record of 46, 27, and 5. They have 97 points. And the New Jersey Devils have a record of 41, 30, and 7. They have 89 points. So I'm pretty sure in the Metropolitan Division that all 3 teams are locked into place. Washington's already won that division. Carolina has an 8-point lead on New Jersey. But even if New Jersey were to win 4 in a row and Carolina were to lose 4 in a row, they would still have 1 more victory than New Jersey does by the end of the season. So I'm pretty sure all 3 teams in that division have already locked in a playoff spot. 2 teams in the wild card. The Ottawa Senators have clinched a playoff spot for the first time since the 2016-17 season. They have a record of 42, 30, and 6. They have 90 points. Montreal Canadiens, I believe, are just 1 win away from clinching a playoff spot for the first time since their 2021 Stanley Cup run. They have a record of 39, 30, and 9. They have 87 points. Okay, so we'll take a look at the teams that are still technically alive in the Eastern Conference. The Columbus Blue Jackets have a record of 36, 33, and 9. They have 81 points with 4 games remaining. So if they were to win 4 games in a row, that would give them 83, 85, 87, 89 points. So they would have a tie with Montreal. And if they happen to win 4 in a row, and God forbid the Habs lost 4 in a row, the Blue Jackets could technically take over first place. But I still think it's a bit of a hill to climb. The Rangers, despite their huge win over their state rivals, or city rivals, I should say, are also 6 points back with 6 games or 3 games remaining. So technically 83, 85, 87. They could tie Montreal for 87 points to finish off their season, but I'm pretty sure if Montreal just gets 1 more win out of their last 4 games, that would eliminate the Rangers from postseason. The Detroit Red Wings and New York Islanders both have 4 games remaining with a record of 36, 35, and 7 and 34, 33, and 11. They both have 79 points on the season with 4 games remaining, so their playoff hopes are definitely very, very slim. The rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference look like this. The Buffalo Sabres have a record of 35, 37, and 6. They have 76 points. The Pittsburgh Penguins also have 76 points with a record of 32, 35, and 12. The Philadelphia Flyers and Boston Bruins both have 73 points with records of 32, 37, and 9 and 32, 39, and 9. Respectively. All right, now we're off to the Western Conference. Might as well see if I can get all the teams here that are in a playoff position, at least for now. The Winnipeg Jets, after a huge victory over the Dallas Stars, have a record of 54, 21, and 4. They have 112 points. They are just 1 more win away from clinching that first spot in the Central Division. The Dallas Stars have a record of 50, 23, and 6. They have 106 points. The Colorado Avalanche cannot catch up to Dallas for second place. They will more than likely finish in third place, I do apologize, with a record of 48, 28, and 4. They only have 2 games remaining on their schedule. In the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights have a record of 48, 22, and 9. They have 105 points. The Los Angeles Kings have a record of 45, 24, and 9. They have 99 points. And the Edmonton Oilers have a record of 45, 28, and 5. They have 95 points. The only way that LA could drop down to third place would be if they lost 3 games in a row or 3 of their last 4 games, and Edmonton would have to win 4 games in a row. It's very likely that it will be LA and Edmonton for the 4th straight year, but this time LA will more than likely have home ice advantage. The Minnesota Wild and St. Louis Blues are both in a playoff position in the wild card spot in the Western Conference. Minnesota has a record of 43, 29, and 7. They have 93 points. The St. Louis Blues have a record of 43, 30, and 7. They have 2 games remaining on their schedule. The one team that could possibly pull off an upset, but it's very, very slim, would be the Calgary Flames. They are 5 points back out of a playoff spot with a record of 37, 27, and 14. They have 88 points, so they would have to win out their remaining schedule, which is 4 games, and they would have to hope and pray that St. Louis lost their last 2 games or Minnesota lost their last 3 games. So it's looking very slim that Calgary can make a playoff push, but we'll see what happens. The rest of the teams from the Western Conference look just like this. The Vancouver Canucks, despite winning 2 games in a row, have been eliminated from the postseason. They have a record of 37, 29, and 13. They have 87 points. The Utah Hockey Club have been eliminated as well, but they just got eliminated this late in the season, which is pretty good. I still think they had a very successful season, their first year in Utah. They have a record of 36, 30, and 13. They have 85 points. The Anaheim Ducks have a record of 35, 36, and 8. They have 78 points. The Seattle Kraken have a record of 34, 40, and 6. They have 74 points. The Nashville Predators have a record of 29, 42, and 8. They have 66 points. The Chicago Blackhawks have a record of 23, 46, and 10. They have 56 points. And the San Jose Sharks have the worst record in the National Hockey League with a record of 20, 47, and 11. They have 51 points on the season. All right, that's going to take care of this recap between Tuesday and Thursday. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative as well. Until next time, and as always, take care.